Some legends die with time, others wait. For more than 3 centuries, the Pine Barrens of New Jersey have been home to a name that chills every local who dares whisper it: the Jersey Devil. Most call it folklore. But one night, deep in those endless woods, a family discovered that stories can bleed. They moved into a forgotten farmhouse, seeking peace. What they found was terror written in claw marks and screams that never ended. Tonight, we revisit the case the police tried to erase, the night the Jersey Devil came home. The Mulford family moved to the Pine Barrens in early spring of 1999. A father, mother, and their 3 children. They weren't locals. They came from Philadelphia, looking for quiet after years of city chaos. The farmhouse they bought sat 5 miles off Route 530, hidden behind towering pines and swampy soil that swallowed sound. The real estate agent called it peaceful. The neighbors, the few who spoke, called it haunted. The Mulfords ignored the warnings. They were practical people. The father, Robert, worked as a contractor. His wife, Ellen, homeschooled their children, 12, 9, and 6. They thought isolation meant safety. But on their very first night, something was wrong. The woods were alive, not with the hum of insects or the chirp of birds, but with something heavier, rhythmic, like footsteps circling the house. The dogs barked until their throats were raw, staring at the tree line, as if something stood there watching. By morning, Robert found deep claw marks on the wooden fence, 5 slashes, each one the size of a man's hand. He blamed raccoons, maybe a bear, but the tracks in the mud were wrong. They had hooves, split like a goat's, yet too large, too deep. Ellen began locking the doors during the day. The children refused to play outside, claiming they heard wings brushing the roof at night. By the 3rd week, the smell came. Sulfur, rot, and something metallic, like blood left in the sun. Locals avoided the property. One old man at a gas station finally told Robert what others wouldn't. That house is where the lead's blood runs cold. That's where the devil comes when he wants company. Robert laughed it off, until the night he heard a scream echo from the woods. Not human, not animal, something in between. That was the first time he saw it. Tall, dark, its skin stretched over bone, wings folded like torn leather behind its back, eyes that burned red through the fog. It didn't charge, it didn't move, it only watched. Robert shut the door, trembling, and whispered to his wife, "There's something in the pines, and it knows we're here." The next few nights were a slow descent into madness. After Robert's sighting, Ellen begged him to leave, but he refused. He said it was just exhaustion, an animal, a trick of the fog. He promised to set up cameras around the house to prove it. That night they heard the first footsteps above them. Not the soft scurry of mice, not the creak of settling wood, but distinct, heavy steps dragging across the attic floor. At first, Robert went up armed with a flashlight and hammer. Nothing, just dust and old boxes. But when he came back down, Ellen noticed something odd. His shirt was streaked with soot, and his hands smelled like metal. The next morning, Ellen found a strange symbol burned into the attic floor, a circle with a cross carved through the middle. It wasn't there before. By now, the children refused to sleep in their rooms. They said they could hear whispering, voices calling their names through the vents. One night, the youngest, Sarah, woke up screaming that a winged man was sitting at the foot of her bed, smiling. The smell of sulfur returned, stronger than ever, seeping from the attic door. Even the dogs wouldn't go near it. They whimpered, tails between their legs, staring upward like something was watching from above. Robert's cameras caught nothing but static. At exactly 3:12 a.m., every recording glitched, as if something invisible had walked in front of the lens. On one frame, just one, a pair of faint glowing dots appeared near the ceiling. When he enhanced the image, he realized they weren't dust or reflection. They were eyes. Desperate, Ellen called the local priest. Father Bennett had lived in the region for decades, and when she mentioned hoofprints and sulfur, his voice went cold. He told her he'd come the next morning, but begged her to leave the house until then. They didn't. That night, the noises grew louder. Scratching, flapping, moaning, the sound of something enormous shifting above the beams. Around midnight, a single scream echoed through the house, sharp and high, like a dying animal. It came from the attic. Robert climbed the stairs again, his flashlight shaking. When he opened the attic door, the stench was unbearable. Every wall was covered in claw marks, and the symbol on the floor was glowing faintly red, as if burning from beneath. Then came the sound, the creak of the roof giving way, followed by a deafening crash as something massive landed outside. He ran to the window in time to see a shadow rise into the air, leathery wings, horns glinting in the moonlight, eyes burning through the fog. The Jersey Devil was no longer a story. It was awake, and it knew the Mulfords by name. Father Bennett never made it to the Mulford house that morning. When he arrived just after sunrise, the home was silent. The door was wide open, swinging in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of sulfur and something worse: iron, decay, and death. What happened during those final hours remains one of the most gruesome unsolved cases in New Jersey history. It began around 2 a.m., according to neighbors living miles away, who later swore they heard screams echoing through the trees. Ellen had been praying in the living room, whispering words that broke into sobs. Robert sat by the window, clutching his rifle, eyes fixed on the woods outside. The children huddled near the fireplace, wrapped in blankets. Even the dogs whimpered, staring at the front door. Then the scratching started again, not from the attic this time, but from the walls, as if dozens of claws were carving their way inward. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped so fast that Ellen could see her breath. Robert shouted for the kids to stay low. He ran to the front door, just as something slammed into it from the outside, hard enough to crack the hinges. The dogs began barking uncontrollably, then suddenly stopped. Silence. When Ellen looked through the window, she saw movement. A figure stood in the fog, tall, impossibly thin, wings folded against its back, steam rising from its body as if it burned from within. Its head tilted, and 2 glowing red eyes met hers. Then the glass shattered. Something black and leathery burst through the window, slashing across the curtains and walls. Ellen screamed for her husband, but Robert was already gone, dragged halfway through the front door, his boots scraping against the floor as he fought to pull himself back inside. The creature's claws dug into his shoulders. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp, uneven teeth. It shrieked, a sound not made for human ears. When Ellen grabbed the rifle, it turned toward her, wings expanding like a shadow swallowing the room. The last thing anyone ever heard from the Mulford family was that scream, a single blood-curdling cry that echoed through the pines, followed by silence and the flutter of enormous wings. When police entered the house, they found no bodies, only streaks of blood, smeared across the walls, windows and floor, and hoofprints leading from the living room to the edge of the woods. The official report called it an animal attack. But Father Bennett refused to sign the statement. He said there were no animals that left claw marks 10 feet high or symbols burned into the glass. He looked at the trees and whispered a single word before leaving: Leeds. Because deep down he knew the devil had come home to its bloodline. By dawn, the Mulford house was surrounded. State troopers, detectives, and rescue dogs combed through the property. But what they found inside defied every protocol and every ounce of logic they had. The living room looked like a storm had passed through, furniture overturned, glass shattered, walls shredded with claw marks deep enough to expose the beams. No bodies, no blood trails leading outward, just chaos. The kitchen table was split in half, one of the children's drawings pinned to the wall with something sharp, a small black talon, still warm. On the paper, a child had drawn a stick figure with wings, horns, and red eyes. Above it, in shaky letters, were the words, "It's outside again." Outside, the ground was covered in prints, not human, not animal. Each was shaped like a hoof, but the depth, the spacing, the stride, It was as if something heavy had walked upright, dragging its tail behind it. The trail led into the trees and then simply vanished near the swamp line, where mist hung low and the air stank of sulfur. The police called in helicopters, divers, forensic experts, but nothing turned up. Every recording device placed at the scene malfunctioned. Radios emitted static, batteries drained within minutes. The lead investigator, Detective Harold Crane, noted in his report that the forest felt wrong. The air was too still, and the deeper they went, the quieter it became until the world around them felt suffocated. Then, around midday, one of the search dogs bolted into the woods, howling. They followed the sound until they found the animal dead, its body twisted, no visible wounds, its eyes burned black. Around it, carved into the dirt, was the same symbol that Robert Mulford had found in his attic, a circle with a cross through the center. The discovery broke something inside Crane. He had grown up in New Jersey. He'd heard the stories. The cursed 13th child of Deborah Leeds, born a demon, banished to the Pine Barrens, cursed to wander for eternity. He never believed them, until that day. The search continued for 3 more days. No trace of the Mulfords was ever found. Not clothing, not blood, not remains. Only one item turned up on the 4th morning, a fragment of burned wood from the attic with one word etched into it: mine. The official report was sealed by the state, but off record, several officers quit the force. 2 never returned to work at all. One of them, years later, was found living in Pennsylvania, still wearing his old badge, mumbling about the eyes in the fog. To this day, the property remains abandoned. Locals say at night, if you stand by the fence line, you can still hear the sound of wings dragging through the trees, because the police didn't find the devil. It found them first. Father Bennett returned to the parish 3 days after the Mulford family vanished. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. Witnesses said he looked pale, shaken, and kept murmuring prayers under his breath as if he were trying to drown out the sound of something only he could hear. He called the diocese that morning, demanding access to an old record, a document buried deep in the church's archives titled The Leeds Confession. No one knew what he meant. The record didn't exist in any catalogue, but Bennett swore he'd seen it once, decades earlier during his seminary studies. According to his private journal, discovered after his death, the document described a family curse dating back to 1735, when Deborah Leeds, a woman accused of witchcraft, gave birth to her 13th child inside a cabin near the Pine Barrens. The midwife, terrified, claimed the infant transformed moments after birth, sprouting wings, claws, and a tail, before letting out an inhuman scream and flying up the chimney into the storm. The church sealed the event under the label Leeds Progeny, marking the site as eternally unholy. The child was said to return every few generations, drawn to the bloodline of those tied to its ancestry, or anyone who dared settle near its birthplace. That was the connection Bennett found. The Mulford property sat less than 2 miles from the original Leeds homestead. He spent the next night writing letters, desperate, his words trembling across the page. He confessed that he believed the Mulford case was not a haunting, but a summoning. He described the symbol found in the attic as an ancient sigil from 17th century demonology, a binding mark used not to summon a demon, but to invite one. In his final sermon before he disappeared, Father Bennett said something no one forgot. The devil of Jersey is not trapped in the woods. It is called home by those who believe they can control it, but no one controls hunger. The next morning, parish staff found the chapel doors wide open. On the altar lay Bennett's crucifix, cracked clean in half, and his Bible opened to Revelation 13, the passage describing the beast rising from the earth. Outside, the gravel path bore hoofprints that led straight into the forest. Some said he went to confront it. Others believed he was taken. Weeks later, hunters discovered his rosary deep in the Pine Barrens, half buried in ash and bone. No body was ever found. The Vatican officially dismissed his notes as fiction influenced by local superstition, but those who read his journal swear by one chilling line written across the final page: the 13th child still walks, and it remembers its mother's curse. 2 weeks after the Mulford family vanished, the Pine Barrens were sealed off by state authorities. Officially, it was for environmental assessment after reports of toxic gas leaking from the swamp. Unofficially, the police were hunting for something far worse than a chemical hazard. On the 16th day of the search, a park ranger named Samuel Riggs discovered a child wandering along a dirt road near Atzian Lake, barefoot, covered in mud, trembling from head to toe. The boy couldn't speak at first. His eyes were wide, unblinking, as if frozen in some waking nightmare. When Riggs asked where he came from, the boy whispered one word: home. He was around 9 years old, the exact age of Daniel Mulford, the middle child, but something was wrong. Doctors at the county hospital noted unusual scars along his back and shoulders, thin and symmetrical, as though from deep claw marks that had healed in perfect alignment. He refused to eat anything except raw meat and water, and whenever the nurses tried to turn off the lights, he screamed until they turned them back on. Investigators confirmed it. DNA testing proved the boy was Daniel Mulford. But the strange part, he hadn't aged a day. Medical records from his birth showed he should have been 11. Daniel was transferred to a psychiatric ward under 24-hour surveillance. For weeks, he wouldn't speak. Then, one night, he began drawing strange, childlike sketches on the wall using pieces of charcoal from the fireplace. The images showed a tall creature with wings and glowing red eyes standing over a house. In one drawing, a woman, his mother, reached out, her hand resting on the creature's chest. In another, the entire family floated above the house, surrounded by fire. Finally, Daniel spoke. He told the doctors that it didn't kill them. It took them where the trees talk. He described a place deep in the forest, a clearing surrounded by ancient pines, where the ground opened like a mouth. The devil, he said, lived there, and his parents had been taken below. When asked how he escaped, Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. He let me go. He said, "I'm not ready yet." A week later, the boy vanished from the hospital. Security footage showed him walking calmly down the hallway at 3:10 a.m., then simply disappearing as he turned the corner. The last frame captured showed 2 glowing reflections in the glass behind him, like eyes. The following morning, staff found a single message scrawled across his hospital bed in ash. He said, "Thank you for bringing me home." Daniel was never found, but weeks later, hunters reported seeing a small figure wandering the woods at dusk, barefoot, with eyes that glowed faintly red beneath the moonlight. After Daniel's disappearance, the case of the Mulford family was officially declared closed. The files were sealed under federal order, and all remaining evidence was transferred to an undisclosed facility in Trenton. But not everyone was willing to forget. Detective Marlene Connors, one of the original investigators on the case, couldn't let it go. She'd seen too much. The claw marks etched deep into the farmhouse walls, the black residue that corroded her gloves when she touched it, and the way every compass near the Pine Barrens spun like a storm of magnetic chaos. When she tried to reopen the case, her superior shut her down immediately. "Let it die, Marlene," he said. "This isn't for us anymore." Within a week, her access to the case files was revoked. Her badge was quietly suspended for psychological evaluation. But Marlene didn't stop. She began conducting her own investigation, off the record. Late at night, she drove through the Barrens with a thermal camera, capturing strange heat signatures moving through the trees. One clip showed a tall, skeletal figure with massive folding wings, gliding silently between the pines. The temperature, 11 degrees Celsius. Despite being recorded in August. She leaked some of her findings online through an anonymous forum dedicated to local legends. Within days, her post disappeared and her account was deleted. Then, the letters started arriving. Each envelope was sealed with wax and marked only with a symbol, a goat's head. surrounded by 13 stars. Inside, the first letter was a short note. "You're getting too close. He was never supposed to be found." By the third letter, the threats became personal. Photos of Marlene's home, her car, her daughter leaving school. She went to local police, but the report vanished from the system within 24 hours. In desperation, she turned to a retired state trooper who'd worked in Burlington County during the 1970s, a man named Dennis Rourke. He told her something that made her blood run cold. According to Rourke, the state had been tracking unexplained disappearances in the Pine Barrens since 1909, the year of the first official sighting of the Jersey Devil. The Mulfords weren't the first family to vanish, they were the 14th. Every 20 years, the pattern repeated, entire households disappearing without a trace, livestock mutilated, and symbols burned into trees near the sites. And always one survivor, a child. Rourke claimed the government covered it up, fearing mass panic and tourism collapse, but Marlene believed it was more than that. She thought the state was protecting the entity, or worse, using it. Before she could publish her findings, Marlene disappeared. Her car was found abandoned on a dirt road outside the Barrens, engine still running, her dashcam ripped out. In her apartment, investigators discovered her notes burned to ash, all except one photograph she'd hidden behind a painting, a picture of Daniel Mulford standing in front of a tree, smiling. Carved into the bark behind him were two words in Latin, non moritur, he does not die. Winter came early that year. The Pine Barrens were swallowed by fog, thick, white, almost solid, like the forest was trying to bury itself. Locals said the trees whispered again. Hunters heard it first, strange voices calling their names, echoing through miles of cold silence. Then came the lights, small crimson orbs floating between the pines, pulsing like living hearts. No one could explain them. Thermal cameras showed nothing. Drones lost GPS signal the moment they entered the forest. The last confirmed sighting occurred near Leeds Point, the supposed birthplace of the Jersey Devil. A truck driver named Carl Denning was driving down Route 563 at 2:47 a.m. when his dashcam recorded something extraordinary. A figure, tall, emaciated, wings spread wide, emerged from the fog, its body half human, half beast. Its head twisted backward as it landed on the road. For 2 full seconds it looked straight at the camera, its eyes glowing a dull blood red. Then it vanished. Carl's truck was found idling on the shoulder, doors wide open. He was gone. Within days, federal agents sealed off the road. The footage leaked online, but every copy vanished within hours. Only one frame remains, the silhouette of something enormous crouching in the mist. Meanwhile, residents of nearby towns began reporting missing pets, gutted deer, and hoofprints that appeared overnight in the snow. But these tracks weren't like any known animal. They were elongated, distorted, like something wearing the memory of a hoof, but not quite fitting inside it. And then whispers spread that the Mulford farmhouse, long abandoned and condemned, had lights inside again. A local journalist snuck in with a hidden camera. What he captured was chilling. In the living room, dozens of burned candles surrounded a wooden chair. On the walls, handprints, small and childlike, smeared in black soot. And carved into the wood floor, barely visible under the wax, were 3 words: "He is home." Authorities dismissed it as a hoax. But the journalist, Paul Denton, disappeared 2 days later. His camera was found half a mile from the house. Its last clip showed the dark outline of a boy standing at the tree line, barefoot, whispering. Audio engineers later enhanced the sound. It was a single phrase, repeated over and over in a broken child's voice. He said, "Thank you for believing." The state has since prohibited access to the Pine Barrens after sunset. Yet hikers still report hearing heavy wing beats overhead, followed by distant guttural laughter that fades into the wind. Some claim the Jersey Devil never left. Others believe it became something worse, a legacy passed from one generation to the next. And deep within the woods, beneath the frozen soil where the Mulford house once stood, a faint heartbeat still echoes at night. a reminder that monsters don't die, they wait. If this story chilled you to the bone, don't forget to subscribe. New episodes every week revealing the darkest truths hidden in America's forgotten legends. Turn on notifications because next time we enter the woods of Point Pleasant, where something even older than the Jersey Devil still walks under the red moon. Your click keeps these investigations alive, and your courage keeps the darkness away. Stay alert, stay curious, and never wander alone.